Everyone thinks they know me. The girl with 6 fingers, the temptress who danced her way into the crown, the conniving mistress who broke a kingdom in half and paid for it with her head. But I wasn't a villain. I was a woman, born into a world that feared them. I was born around 1501, not to royalty, but to ambition. The Boleyn family had just enough power to climb, and just enough cunning to try. My father Thomas was a diplomat, calculating, clever, and always watching for the next step up the ladder. My mother, Elizabeth Howard, came from nobility, but even that didn't guarantee anything for a daughter. Girls were bargaining chips, chess pieces, and I was trained to play the game. At a young age, I was sent abroad, to Margaret of Austria's court in the Netherlands and then to France. Most girls were raised to smile and curtsy. I was raised to listen. I spoke French fluently. I read philosophy. I absorbed court politics the way others memorised prayer. I saw how women moved through the world, not freely but with finesse. I learned early that power didn't come from titles. It came from perception. When I returned to England, I wasn't like the other girls. I wasn't soft-spoken or submissive. I had opinions. I laughed too loudly. I read too much. I flirted, yes. But I also thought I wasn't meant to be dangerous. But intelligence in a woman? That's always been considered a threat. Then came Henry. He was a king bored of his queen. Catherine of Aragon had been loyal, kind, and endlessly dutiful. But after nearly 2 decades of marriage, she hadn't given him a surviving son. And Henry was obsessed with legacy, with male heirs, with control. He had already seduced my sister Mary. That didn't satisfy him. He wanted me, but I was not Mary. I said no. And that made me irresistible. For 6 years he chased me. I didn't give in. I didn't give up my virtue for some title or favour. I held my ground, and in doing so, I flipped the entire royal court upside down. He wrote me letters filled with lust, longing, even poetry. He called me his mistress and promised me marriage. He began to imagine a world with me beside him. But Catherine stood in the way. So Henry petitioned the Pope for an annulment. Rome said no. Henry, furious, said fine, I'll make my own church. And he did. He ripped England from Catholicism, declared himself supreme head of the Church of England, burned bridges, toppled cardinals, and destroyed centuries of tradition. And the world blamed me. They said I bewitched him. They said I had used charms, potions, and spells, that I had bewitched a king into forsaking God. Really? Or did he just want what he couldn't have, and used me as the scapegoat when the world turned on him? By 1533, I was crowned Queen of England. He placed the crown of St. Edward, normally reserved for monarchs, on my head. He wanted the world to see me not just as his wife, but as his equal. It was the peak of my power, and also the beginning of my fall. I gave birth to Elizabeth in September that year. Henry wanted a son. He was furious, disappointed. But I held my daughter in my arms, looked into her fierce little eyes, and knew I had created something stronger than any Tudor man could imagine. But in Henry's eyes, I had failed him. The court grew colder. The whispers got louder. I miscarried twice more, one of those a boy. That's when I knew. The crown I wore had never been made for me. I had borrowed it, and the debt was coming due. Henry's eye had wandered again, this time to Jane Seymour. She was everything I wasn't. Meek, quiet, and fertile. More importantly, she kept her mouth shut. I didn't. I still advised Henry on matters of state. I had opinions on foreign policy. I pushed for religious reform. I gave to the poor, built schools, translated religious texts. But the more I did, the more they resented me. A queen was supposed to be silent, decorative, fertile. I was vocal, visible, and, in their words, barren. And then the real betrayal began. They accused me of adultery, of incest, of treason. They said I seduced my own brother, that I lay with poets and musicians, that I plotted the king's death. They said I laughed too much, danced too boldly, touched too freely. The charges were lies. Everyone knew it. But Henry didn't care. He needed a clean break, and nothing says final like a blade to the neck. I was arrested, thrown in the tower, the same tower I had entered for my coronation, now my prison. I waited there, cold and alone, while they tried 5 innocent men and executed every one of them. My brother George among them. They called me a monster, a harlot, a witch. Funny, isn't it? I gave him 6 years of loyalty, gave him a daughter who would one day rule the world, and in return, he gave me a French swordsman to sever my head. On May 19th, 1536, I stood before a crowd in the Tower courtyard. I wore a grey gown and a crimson robe. My hair was tucked under a linen coif. I looked out at the faces, some sympathetic, some hungry for spectacle. I said my final words with grace. I did not accuse. I did not rage. I knelt calmly. I prayed silently, and I let the blade fall. But that was not the end of me, because the daughter they dismissed, Elizabeth, she grew into a legend. The Virgin Queen, Gloriana, the woman who reigned for 45 years, never married, never bowed to a man. She oversaw the English Renaissance, the defeat of the Spanish Armada, the rise of Shakespeare, the golden age of exploration. Under her, England became an empire, a force. She ruled with the wit and will she inherited from me. So tell me, was I still a failure? They reduced me to a footnote, a cautionary tale, but time has rewritten that. I am not Anne the whore, not Anne the witch, not Anne the curse. I am Anne the strategist, Anne the scholar, Anne the mother of a queen. I didn't destroy a kingdom, I gave it its future. I was a woman in a world that preferred women silent, docile and disposable. I was none of those things. So they tried to erase me. But you don't burn witches because they're evil. You burn them because they're powerful. And I was fire. Still am.